and welcome, RaeAnne. So this
Thank you.
is Creating Conversations virtual event to celebrate the summer deal. And we are delighted to have Jill Shalvis and RaeAnne Thayne in conversation. Sorry, not very practiced yet at reading and being on the camera. So a brief intro in case anybody who's here is not already familiar with our authors. New York Times bestselling author Jill Shalvis lives in a small town in the Sierra full of quirky characters. A resemblance to the quirky characters in her books is mostly coincidental. Look for her best-selling award-winning titles wherever books are sold, and visit her website for a complete book list and daily blog detailing her city girl living in the mountains with bears adventures. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And joining Jill in conversation is New York Times bestselling author RaeAnne Thayne. RaeAnne writes heartwarming books about real people overcoming life's inevitable challenges, including internet connectivity sometimes, and learning to care for each other. She finds inspiration in the beautiful Utah mountains, where she has lived most of her life, though she loves to travel and hopes to be able to resume discovering new places to dream soon. So Jill's latest, which we're here to celebrate, is The Summer Deal, and Publishers Weekly's review said in part, a pair of guarded half-sisters learn to open up in this sweet, summery romance from Shalvis. And it says, readers will find it easy to root for Shalvis's stubborn, vulnerable heroes, to recognize both the decency and compassion of the sexy men who love them and their own worthiness to be loved. This heartfelt tale is thoroughly satisfying. And PJ of the Romance Dish blog said of The Sea Glass Cottage, which is RaeAnne's most recent, I've been reading her books since 2007 and she hasn't disappointed me yet. Whether it's contemporary romance or women's fiction, on a Western cattle ranch or in a small coastal California town, her characters always hold my attention and touch my heart. You're in the mood for a story of family secrets, grief, hope, second chances, romance, forgiveness, and love that will engage your emotions and deliver a satisfying happy ever after, I recommend this Sea Glass Cottage. So, speaking of coasts and summers and all of that, we were talking a little bit before we started formally about the fact that you all like to hang out in our neck of the woods, Manhattan Beach, periodically. So we wish you could be with us actually in Redondo Beach and Manhattan Beach, but we're delighted to have you here tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to you both for the time being.
Great,
Thank you for having us.
And we do love Manhattan Beach. So
We do.
it makes me think of long walks and lots of sitting and looking out the window while we plot.
And she's not kidding about long walks. Remember, I don't remember what year it was, at least 3 years ago, we thought, let's just go for a walk. We walked down the beach and then we looked down and we were 10,000 steps in and we had to come back. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was the year we saw the Navy SEALs training, remember?
Oh my God, how could I forget? 100 Navy SEALs running up and down the beach 25 times. Maybe that's why we walked so far.
Yeah, we got distracted, didn't we?
That was day one and our feet hurt so bad for the rest of the trip because we walked too far.
Yeah, it did. We get to talking too
Worth
often.
it.
So just for those maybe who don't know, should we tell them why we get together every year in Manhattan Beach? Do you want to explain?
Well, we both live in snow country. I'm in Northern California, you're in Utah. So we meet once a year to plot, and we thought it might as well be enjoyable. So we go from the snow to the beach on purpose.
Right. On purpose, and it's lovely. We spend about 4 days there, 3 nights usually, and 4 days, and we plot. Usually we can get 2 books out from each other, and there's 4 of us. We get together and we each sort of come with an idea that we throw out there, and then we each get a couple of hours for each book or for each subplot or however we want to handle it. Yeah. And we just throw out ideas and kind of help each other figure out what direction. You know, we've both written a lot of books, and so this is one way that we could sort of keep things fresh, right?
Well, we've both been writing since the Ice Age, basically. Right. Actually, very much since the Ice Age. And it's just, you know, it's a lovely place, but it's a lot of work. We work really hard.
We do. I'm always tired when I come back, but energized because it's
Mm-hmm.
fun to hang out with friends and creativity, you know, throw the creativity around and come see what people come up with. And my books are always so good that come out of Plot Group. What about you? Do you find the same thing?
Oh yes, I don't think we could. I feel like I couldn't do it without this trip. Whether
Right.
that's the beach or the seals, I don't know.
One of those things. And the lemon cake, right?
Oh my God. Yes. I don't remember the name of this place, but we found it a long time ago. This place that has the most, is it cake or pie?
It's cake, right? It's like a cake that's about that
It's
high.
yes. And it's massive and it's, you know, amazing.
Yeah.
And probably 1,000 calories per bite. But we go every year.
But we share it among the four of us.
Yeah, well, because it's,
so.
you know.
It's giant.
I need some of that right now, actually.
I know, that would be good.
I'm dreaming about lemon cake.
So should we talk about how we met? That was one of the questions that a lot of people asked. How did we meet and how long we've been friends and kind of how long have we been kicking around ideas?
The Ice Age, right? We met both of our first year, I think, in the late 90s.
Right.
Do you remember what year it was?
So my first book came out in 96 and I think yours was 97
or 98. Yeah, it took you
but we
longer.
both sold for the same publisher, so in the beginning, so we knew each other from various like publisher events that they did at the time, from romance writing conventions and things, but not really well. I mean, I knew you in passing, and probably for another 10 years I knew you in passing, and it wasn't until, you know, probably I want to say maybe about 8 years ago or something like that.
I wish I can remember the year. Yeah.
But we just kind of struck up an email correspondence, and then from there it's been, you know, we've been tight ever since.
I know. Now I feel like we're writing partners.
We are. Yeah, because we sit lots of times. She'll say, "I'm starting. I'll talk to you in an hour," and so then we haven't done that in a while. But then check in an hour and say, "Oh, I only got 600 pages or 600 words. I wish 600 pages, but 600 words. How did you do?" And you know, so we
well, actually, what happens is we actually have different phases when we're writing. We're writing, or then we're editing what we just wrote, and then we're polishing what we just edited. And so throughout those phases, it's kind of not often that we're in the exact same phase, but when we are both in the writing phase, we do check in. How many words did you get? You can do this. You got this. And right now I'm in the editing stage and I'm about ready to keel over and die. And you're so nice. You always tell me, you got this. You can do this. I don't think I got this. I need the lemon cake,
but I know we do this through every book.
We do.
Can't finish this book. Oh, I'm frozen.
I can hear you though. Oops, no. Did I lose you entirely? Tell me you didn't go away. I think she went away.
I hope I'm still there.
Okay, good. I can hear you. Do you want to sign out and come back in, see if we can find you again?
Okay, so I'll throw a question at you, Jill,
Okay,
while RaeAnne fights with technology, just so we're not awkwardly watching and waiting for you to make scores.
I do have a list of questions if you run out of people that sent in questions.
I suspect we will be good on the questions.
Okay.
So you were talking about editing.
Yes.
And so this has been a fairly common question in Romancelandia lately, which is, how do you edit post-pandemic? What do you do with your scenes? You know, do you have people in bars and restaurants? How do you deal with that feeling that all worlds are science fictional worlds right now?
Well, it's a really interesting question. And I think all of us who are writing right now are wondering what to do. I put the question out on Facebook not too long ago, and people were actually 50-50 torn. They don't want to read about it. It's still too new. It's still too real. And then the other 50% were that, yeah, we want a book from that. We think that there could be a really fun book from that. So I could go either way and annoy half of my readers. I haven't decided yet. This book that I'm writing right now, I started right before. I started it in late February. And so it's pre-pandemic, and yet it won't come out until next year. So whether I decide to write a quarantine book or not, this one's going to come out first, and it's going to not be in this basically zombie apocalypse world.
Yeah, I know, in talking with readers that that's been a little surreal, right? Like,
Right. And so I hope that readers will accept this. This book comes out next June, and I have a book out next January. So both of those books won't be in this pandemic world. And so I'm hoping that that's okay. Maybe people just want an escape. She's back. Can't hear you yet, though. But regarding that question you just asked me about the quarantine, the interesting thing, the really hard thing was actually writing this book while living through the quarantine. I have 9 people in my house right now, and they've been here for months. And it's, it's a challenge to work under those conditions.
9 people?
Yes, so I have all my kids, and they all have their significant others with them. And so there's 9 of us and 4 dogs, and we've been here together since mid-March. And we haven't all lived together in a very long time. So it's been both wonderful and challenging. I mean, think about the logistics of that 9 people who need toilet paper and who need 3 meals a day. And I'm working full time. It's interesting.
So how do you do it? That was one of the questions that people asked in advance. How are you finding a way to focus?
Well, I come out to the deck and I shut and lock the door and I turn on the fire and I put earplugs in and I go. And I try not to, I can see inside the kitchen right now, they're all in there dancing. They must have music on and they're making food. And so I just try not to see that. I often will actually turn the other way. So I'm looking out at the woods.
And you have a few decks, right? So you can move with the sun
rotate.
And move away from.
How are you doing it? Because you have a challenging situation too.
We do have a challenging situation, but my husband's been amazing, and so that's about the only way that I've been able to get anything done. We have a son with disabilities who takes total care, and so we can't have caregivers. We did for a few days, but we've got an outbreak in my community. Oh, you're frozen again. I don't know what's going on.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. Is there another question that I could
Hopefully
answer?
It'll come back in a second.
Yeah,
no, I'm here. I'm back.
All right, RaeAnne, so the question that we had asked leading into writing in quarantine, if you get unfrozen, was talking about whether or not to address post-pandemic changes in your contemporary work.
Did we lose her?
I'm still here. I can kind of hear you, but once in a while you freeze, and I don't know what to do about it other than I could go over to my house, but it would be total chaos if I did that.
The question is, how are you going to write in this post-pandemic world? Are you going to write a book and place it in this world? Darn it, those mountains. All right, I'll see if I can find a question here until she can come back.
They always told us that living in the woods was going to be a good thing during the zombie apocalypse, but they forgot to deal with the fact of the, internet technology. So Jill, you mentioned that you already have your pub dates for your next 2 books. They're complete. You're doing the editing in them or whatever. So can you tell us a little bit about what's up with them? And RaeAnne, your next one is very soon, if I recall, like a month or so away, correct?
Yeah, my next one comes out in just a couple of weeks. It's June 23rd. So I moved to another room that hopefully the connection might be a little more stable. It
sounds more stable. It already sounds more stable. What's the June book?
Pretty.
What's your book called? I can't remember.
It's called Summer at Lake Haven.
Did we plot this?
We did plot this. This was the one, we did it like 2 years ago, and it was the dressmaker and the British. And I remember you saying, "Oh, I want to write that book." But
yeah,
too bad.
It's going to be awesome. I love him. He's kind of a nerd, right?
He's like a biology researcher, and comes over. His sister's having a wedding, and the heroine makes her dress.
That's going to be a good one. But like she was saying, this is now the post-apocalyptic world practically. How do you feel about putting out a book that's not going to have any mention of this world that we now live in? Oh dear, it turned out that room doesn't work for her either. Okay, well, let's see. I have a question from Sheila Bonuso. How many books do you write a year? Jill, with all your family with you, has it been harder to concentrate and write? I know that sweet baby would be a definite distraction for me. Well, yes, the sweet baby is my first grandchild. And I should say I had kids when I was 12. So anyways, it's wonderful having a baby in the house, but obviously very distracting. And as I said, I come out to the deck to write out here. I write 2 books a year and a novella. And this year that's a challenge because I'm writing a book that is not coming along as fast as it has in the past. And I know that's just the times, and the anxiety is probably all of you are feeling yourself. Let's see, what other questions? Someone said, I saw the picture you posted of the tank-sized bear. Are you nervous walking in your beautiful woods that you will encounter a mama and cubs or a dad as you come around a corner? Well, that has actually happened to me a couple of times. One time I looked out, I was riding on the grass and my puppy, my brown lab puppy, was playing at my feet. And I looked up from riding and there was two puppies and then 3 puppies, only they weren't puppies, they were bear cubs playing with my brown lab. And so that was a little nerve-wracking because that meant the mama was very close and the babies were adorable, but the bear mamas are never adorable. So I gathered up my dog, we ran inside, and sure enough, the mother came by and grabbed her bears and took off her babies. It was very cute, but not very comfortable for me.
Your dog thought, hey, I'll just go play with the bear.
Yes.
That seems like a good idea.
Yep, no prejudice there. Diversity right here in the Shalvis yard.
Yikes. I have a friend who accidentally got between a mom and her cubs while out bike riding and was trying to do the thing where she was loud to get out of there.
Yes, yes.
All she could think of to do was sing Teddy Bear Picnic at the top of her voice as she pedaled away.
Because, you know, you don't, when that happens, the adrenaline rush that hits you coming face to face with a wild bear, the size of a VW essentially, it's overwhelming. Your mind goes completely blank. And your first instinct is to be quiet and to maybe run. That's not the right thing to do. But it's really hard to be loud because you can't think of anything to say. It's the strangest feeling.
All right. One of the sidebar questions that's come in is a question from Brooke, who wants to know what you all talk about when you're hanging out other than plotting, like if you're enjoying a glass of something with your lemon cake on the beach.
Yes, we do that. We talk about everything. You know, being a writer is a very quiet, single person profession. So you spend almost the whole year by yourself with your book and your characters, with the exception of events like this or signings or whatever, but for the most part, you're alone. So then you get to a place where you're finally with the people who are doing the same thing you're doing. And so we'll talk for hours and hours and hours about everything and anything, because we don't have the office water cooler every day or even weekly. It's, you know, kind of an annual thing, and it's pretty great.
That's excellent. All right. One of the other questions that came in was how you get into the zone to write, which you mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of, you know, separating yourself, creating your office space away from your family, but you're still there with all that gorgeous nature. So how do you get yourself in the headspace, and especially a different headspace? How do you get yourself to the beach when you're there in the woods?
Well, I live very close to Lake Tahoe and Donner Lake and the Truckee River. You know, you can walk through those woods to a cliff about 300 feet away, and the cliff is about 150 feet down to the Truckee River. So I change locations often. I have ADHD and I'm unmedicated. So I take my laptop and I move around. I'll write at the lake, I'll write at the river, I'll write at the cliff, I'll write down there on the patio, which is where I was yesterday when the bear came walking across practically right in front of me. So those kind of things keep it fresh. As for keeping my mind in the story, when I open up my manuscript in the morning, I also open up the pictures that I've picked out of what the place looks like that I'm writing, what the characters look like. I had a lot of fun with the summer deal, you know, flipping through pictures of guys and women and imagining what they look like. And then I would have them up as I'm writing, so they're real people to me. That helps me keep in the story.
That's excellent. So with your ADD, do you write sequentially or do you have to bounce around to keep
I
yourself?
have to bounce around. I probably couldn't write without an outline. That's what plotting does for me. It gives me a very detailed outline, a roadmap, because if I didn't have that and I was writing from the seat of my pants, which a lot of people very successfully do, I would come up with just episodic scenes. I wouldn't be able to have the flow and keep the threads going. You know, in these stories, there's a lot of threads. It's not just the romance, or in the Summer Deal, I have 2 romances actually. There's also the story between the women and the bromance between one of the heroes and his brother. So there's a lot of relationships to keep track of. And for my brain, that's difficult. So I have the roadmap. I don't always write sequentially. Sometimes I'll write out of order, but because I have the roadmap, it's easy to keep track of. And that keeps me sane.
So you also talked about the fact that there's different stages to books, right? There's writing, there's revising, and there's editing. So do you ever have more than one book that you're doing at one time, or do you have to manage each one individually?
I prefer to manage each one individually and start and finish. And that can take me 5 months from start to finish. But what happens is during that time, the previous book comes back to haunt me in the form of copy edits and then last pass pages, which I have to go through for my publisher and make sure everything is accurate and there's no mistakes. And so sometimes I have to stop what I'm doing, go back to a previous story, attend to that, however my publisher needs, send it back off, and then get back into a story. And that for me is incredibly difficult.
Sure, that makes sense given your description of sort of your thought process. Tina has asked in the chat, she says, Jill, I think The Summer Deal is my favorite of your books.
Aww.
What started the idea of the girls and their relationship?
The Summer Deal is a special book for me. It's been brewing in the back of my head for a long time about 2 girls going through summer camp together. They only see each other at summer camp every year, so like same time next year sort of thing. And except instead of best friends, they're enemies, frenemies. And then later, as adults, they come back together and they each have secrets about each other that will change the course of each other's lives. But they start this, they're still enemies, and they have to find a way back to themselves, to the real themselves, and become family. And that's just always been a dream of mine. I've always wanted to have a sister. I've always wanted to have that kind of a relationship. So because I was able to make it up and write it down. And the interesting thing about this story was it really was only going to be one romance. One of the women was going to have a love story and the other woman was going to not have a love story. That completely changed. This guy walked in off the page unexpectedly for her. So this book has 2 love stories. And another thing that's different about this book is normally one love story takes center place. And the other one, if there is another one, is secondary. All the other relationships are secondary. But in this book, the 2 women are equally heroines. So they're like 50%, each of them have 50% of the book. And that was new for me.
They had to remanage how the screen time worked for everybody.
Yes. So each romance got 50%, which I didn't see coming, but I loved it. I ended up loving
Twice as much kissing.
Yes, that's right.
Terry asks if you'll be telling Max's story.
So Max is the brother of one of the heroes, and he was a surprise too. He was supposed to be kind of a throwaway character, just the joke maker. He was going to be my comedy relief. He would come in on a tense scene and make everything funny and keep it lighthearted. But I fell in love with him too. So he's going to get a novella. He's going to get a story.
Nice. Allison says, I loved Wrapped Up in You last year with a little heart.
Thank you.
And Janet asks, how do you continually come up with the humorous situations that your heroines find themselves in? I have laughed out loud so many times when reading your books.
That's so sweet. Well, to go back to Wrapped Up in You, that story, I had the idea in my head. I was going to bring that whole series, Heartbreaker Bay, is set in San Francisco. And I really, really wanted to write a cowboy come to the city. So I brought him over. I brought this cowboy over from another series. I did the animal series, which takes place in Idaho. So I brought Kel from that series, put him into the city, dropped a cowboy into the city he's on leave from work. And I set him up with the taco chick the taco truck chick. So to me, my pitch to my editor was the taco truck chick and the cowboy does the city. And to me, that was just such a funny setup, so that just kind of set the story up for humor before I even started.
That's fantastic. And actually a comment that Allison had made in anticipation was, I love the taco truck girl. And speaking of the Heartbreaker Bay series, Jessica says, Jill, I love all of your books. Will you have more books in the Heartbreaker Bay series?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not done with that series at all. I will get back to it next year.
Welcome back, RaeAnne. We've kind of gone
Sorry.
down rabbit holes, bear holes, something.
My internet is completely down to everyone. They're all texting me saying, what do we do? Why?
Oh no.
So I'm on my hotspot on my phone right now. So.
Oh my gracious. Well, thank you for
phone.
persevering.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, it's good to see you back.
So one of the questions that Jill talked about a little while you were reconnecting was a little bit about process, about how she keeps herself focused, how she gets into the story, the tools she uses. Do you want to describe yours a little?
We have kind of similar process in that I plot quite a bit. We plotted our plot group, and then I come home and I outline very extensively so that I know where I'm going in the next scene. I do everything on index cards on an app, and then I just go scene by scene through that app, so I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what character's point of view I need to be in. I know what the main plot points that need to happen in each scene, and then I sit down and I do a really rough draft. First of all, it's awful and horrible, and I'd never let anyone see it. And then I do a second draft where I polish it or clean that up, and then I do one final polishing draft. So pretty much three drafts. I don't know what Jill said her process is, but that's mine.
So is your first one like the zero draft? I've heard some people call their first one the zero draft, right? It's not even the first draft.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's basically, it's like plotting. I mean, it's like staging a play. I started out in drama, and so, I think of it a lot of moving the characters around. I write the dialogue. Basically I say something exciting is going to happen here. I don't exactly know what, but it's basically just outlining a little more than an outline in that there's dialogue and things like that. But really the second draft is the one where the bulk of the work comes in for me.
I always think of it like I was a sketcher. I like to do cartoons, and then I like to paint them. So for me, it's always, you start out with a blank piece of paper, and then you draw literally like pencil figures, right? And then you add the depth to that, still in pencil, still in black and white. You sketch in their features, and then you add the color, and it's not 3D until you added the color. And that's what it is. It's like 3 or 4. Sometimes this book I'm on, maybe 5 drafts. And the first one, like RaeAnne, I would die if anybody saw it.
Right. It's hideous. I mean, it's just, it's not even, one of the questions somebody asked if I let people read my books early in the process. I'm like, no, I mean, not until the day I turn it into my editor is it ever in any shape for anyone else to see it, because it's just raw and ugly.
Have you ever done something in your outline and thought, oh, I'll catch this later, and then you really hate past Jill or past RaeAnne? It's like, why did you put plot development here? That is not a note.
Well, we try not to do that. It's part of the reason that we actually go to a plot group, so that there's none of that, because this is kind of an embarrassing story, but way back when we were writing category romance, we used to write for Silhouette and Harlequin, and so it was kind of boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl. And I was writing, and I would put XX wherever I needed to go back and fill in. And one time I just did that for the sex scene. I put XX, he XX her here. And then I got rushed, and my editor had to see it ahead of time, and I sent her the manuscript, and that's what it said instead of the scene. It said he XX her here. After that is when I really started outlining more properly.
That's adorable. I like it. Even though I feel like it should have been triple X, not just 2 X's.
Well, definitely at that time, for sure.
Yeah, I had one time where I put some great line of dialogue goes here, and that got through my final edits. Not the final ones, but it got to my editor when she did her line edit. She's like, I wonder what that great line of dialogue will be.
Yeah, sometimes I hate past Jill.
All right, so in the chat, Staci says, I love the summer deal. I really appreciate that the leading man wasn't described as an alpha. I appreciate hearing all about your alpha man, but also like having a variety of strong male characters, which may have had to do with the balance of the two stories, maybe, Jill?
Definitely, because I feel like the secondary love story, which, you know, was, as I mentioned before, is kind of more than secondary, actually, they're equal. He was more alpha, and he wasn't even supposed to exist. He walked in off the page and introduced himself to me. He wasn't even in the outline. I really just wanted to write a sexy kind of laid back, casual hero. And so that's where he came from.
Excellent. All right, a little more love for Wrapped Up in You from Sandria. Says, I love Wrapped Up in You. I hope you'll have another book on that series soon, especially since I'm from San Francisco.
Oh, I definitely will. Thank you.
He says she was just in another webinar with Kristen Higgins and Susan Elizabeth Phillips. So she's getting your books mixed up, which sounds like great fun to me. More romance, more good. So, you know, there's a little bit of a philosophical discussion right now too about the kinds of books that are people are seeking right now, right? Some of us are seeking informational books. Some of us are seeking escapism. And so, you know, what is your best argument for romance and happy endings?
Well, I've always said I thought romance, no matter what the times, in 2008, it was the recession. Now we're back there again. Times are even worse. I think that any kind of fiction is escapist fiction. And to me, it's mac and cheese. It's comfort food. It's warm cinnamon toast on a stormy night. That's my go-to always. I don't know how you feel about it, RaeAnne.
I feel very much like that. And I also feel like there's always a place for books that make people feel good at the end of them, that lift people and remind them that the world can have beauty in it, even if times are hard. I tend to write characters that are going through hard things or have experienced hard things. And the underlying message is that, yes, things can be hard in your life, but you can still make a difference in other people's lives, and you can still make the world a better place, and you can still find joy even when you've had tough things happen in your life. And I think we need that more than ever right now.
Yeah, so I hope readers agree. I mean, I'm reading, I just find I'm watching TV, I'm soaking up all of the happiness I can, considering it fuel for my soul for when I'm writing. Because otherwise, we're just all little balls of anxiety walking around right now.
Yeah, I listen to all these news reports about how nobody's sleeping right now, and people are so, stressed about everything. We've all gained weight, and we need our books. I just more than ever. That's what reminds me when I come over to work that people need this. They need to be reminded that life is still good, even though it's tough right now. There's still joy.
Fiction's where it's at, people.
Well, I think you're fulfilling that contract with your readers, right? I mean, there's a reason the readers are picking up your books, is they're looking for that outcome and knowing that they're not going to, get to the end and Meg Ryan's character gets killed and Nick Cage's character's like, oh, better to have left him lost. And you're like, oh, I thought this was a romance. Sorry, small rant.
We're with you.
Mary C. asks, given that you're outlining your planning, but also given Jill's mention of her character who she didn't anticipate having the role he did, do your characters ever refuse to do what you want them to?
Oftentimes, yes. Like I mentioned before, we go to plot group, I go home, I make an extensive, very, very detailed outline. It's a roadmap, right? But what happens is you don't always, at least I don't, I'll have to ask RaeAnne how she feels about this. Once in a while, my car veers off the roadmap. And that's what happened in the summer deal. Deck was a character that wasn't supposed to exist. He wasn't in my outline. He stepped onto the page and I just went with it because it felt right. But I was able to steer back into my outline and continue forth. For me, ADHD, unmedicated, it's really super helpful to have that roadmap. I don't think I could write without it, but I'm also allowing myself when necessary to veer off of it for the story if it's working.
I think of that too. I think of I'm a big planner when we go on family trips, but often the most beautiful parts of a trip are the things you don't plan. And I think it's the same way with our stories. You know, it's the little road trip that you took, you know, to visit some weird thing, roadside attraction or whatever, that those are sometimes are the most memorable things about it. And I agree, you have to sort of let the characters take you where they need to go, and that usually is where they needed to go all along. You just didn't, you knew that somewhere in the back of your subconscious, it just hadn't come forward until the writing process. There is such a magic in the writing process from start to finish. And I know you're stressing right now because you're revising, but I promise that you will read this book at the end and you'll say, that's a good story.
It's so funny because often the magic doesn't come until you're on your very, very last draft. And what happens is you read the last draft and you send it off and the magic has just come and you have to let it go. Why can't the magic come on day one, RaeAnne? I don't know.
Well, I think that's our process. That's the muse, you know, it just has to work itself through the story, you know. And for me, it's usually when I get the edits back, you know, because by the time I'm done with the book, I'm like, oh, that's so awful. My editor's going to hate it. I know she's going to hate it. And then I get the edits back and I reread it, you know, a few weeks later, 3 weeks later, and I say, oh, okay, I see what I was doing there.
It's so brief. At that point, it's such a brief time that you get to live with the magic. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I wish it could come sooner. That's all.
Right. Because you had to put the work in, unfortunately.
Yes.
In order to make that magic
a related question from Jen that I think you've touched on, which is how detailed is too detailed for an outline? So is it when it doesn't allow you to have that magical discovery? What would qualify as too detailed?
I have never found it too detailed for me, probably because I don't get detailed enough actually. So that's never happened to me. And the more I have down on that outline, the better. I don't have to use everything on the outline. I'm not rigid about it. And so if it's not working, I fix it or I don't write it. But just having as much details for me as possible works. I think probably RaeAnne's the same.
It is. It's a very much for me, it eliminates some of the stress and anxiety of not knowing where I'm going with the story, because I've worked all that out at a time when the stakes weren't as high, when my deadline is not coming up in a month. You know, I worked all that out and figured out where the story needed to go. And so I don't have to sit there and stare at the page and think, I don't know where to take these characters. So I agree. I mean, I think the more you know about the characters, the more opportunity you have for those little diversionary trips that you're going to take, because you understand these people and you know the characters, you know what they need. And maybe, again, you don't know consciously that you're taking them in a direction, but because you've been in their skin, even as you're plotting and outlining, you kind of know exactly what direction you need to take their particular story.
And also the few times where one of us has gotten it halfway into a story and we figured something was wrong, we revisit it and we fix it.
Yeah. And we have actually emailed each other and plotted with each other midway through, where we say, I don't know exactly where I'm going here. And since we know each other's story, at least where it was in the beginning when we plotted, we can usually help say, oh, I can help you. This is what you need to do. I love that character. It'd be good what if you did this? You know, we don't always know exactly the answer. Sometimes just talking it over is helpful with somebody who knows where you were from the beginning.
Excellent. In a somewhat related question from Tina, she says, RaeAnne, have you ever had a writing drought? How long did it last and how did you get out of it? And Jill, perhaps if that's happened to you as well or not.
I have never had a writing drought to where I do not know. I mean, where I'm totally stuck and can't figure things out. Sometimes I'll get stuck in a scene. I won't know exactly where I'm going in that scene. And then I will just skip that scene for now and work on something else or work on another problem or, you know, work on another idea for another book. I can't say I've ever had a time when the voices have completely dried up or stopped talking to me. Sometimes I don't know exactly where to go in a scene, and then I'll take a walk or I'll, you know, do something else, do something crafty or something a little bit, and the idea comes back to me. So mainly because I have deadlines all the time and I have people waiting for things and I don't have time to not come up with something, you know, and so I have to like figure it out. And I think deadline is a very good motivator.
Definitely. I mean, and same. First of all, we should be clear. We love writing, but this is a job, right? This is how we pay our mortgage. This is how we put a roof over our people's head. And I like to eat. So I've never had the luxury of not being able to write. I always have stories in my head. That's not usually the problem. The problem usually is more along the lines of the discipline to sit down and actually do it.
And that, I find that surprising coming from you, because you're like the most disciplined writer I know in terms of 7 days a week, you're at it.
If I'm in the middle of a story, yeah, that's how, the only way to keep my brain engaged is to do it until it's done.
Right.
I don't recommend
And I have
that.
to take a break. I can't do 7 days a week. I can do 6 maybe, but I have to. And really I can do 4 hours a day maybe, and then my brain is too tired and I'm not good for anything else. I don't know. I mean, if I'm revising, I'm at it constantly because I am on the clock and need to get it done. But when it comes to creating the new words,
that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Excellent. So few questions back, we had a question from Allison who wanted to know when you're not writing, what you're both reading, and particularly if there's anything you're excited about reading right now.
Right now, I am almost 24/7 on this book that I haven't quite got right yet. So I'm not reading anything right now. I find that for me, during this time when I need fuel for my brain, I'm watching TV shamefully. I'm inhaling Netflix and Hulu. How about you, RaeAnne? Are you reading anything?
I am reading. I'm working my way through Eloisa James's Wild series because she had a new one and I haven't gotten to that one yet. I've read them all before, but historicals are kind of my happy place. That's the book. Those are the books that I love to read when I'm escaping.
Yeah,
I love
amazing.
Contemporaries. All my friends are wonderful. My contemporary friends, I love their books too. But if I just need to zone out, that it's historicals, because it's not anything in my own writing style. You know, I have to be somewhere that's not what I'm writing, and so
same.
I love those. So that's what I'm reading right now. I will say it's taken me about a month to get through. They're wonderful books. I just am not finding time to read right now, so unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that's definitely affecting a lot of people in publishing. You know, even speaking to other booksellers, we're like, you would think, you know, quarantine, you would be making massive progress on your reading pile, and instead we're just binging on Hulu and Netflix because it's a different, you know,
we're stressed. We're all stressed.
Yep. So when you're doing that, Jill, what are you watching?
Yeah. Right now I'm binging Billions, which is a great series on Prime, right on Amazon Prime. It's very intense, but it's no romance in it at all, which kind of plays back to what RaeAnne just said. When I'm this deep in a book and I'm having some trouble and I'm anxiety ridden and the world is falling apart, I need something out of my genre. So this is a very kind of action, intense, suspense sort of thing, and it's keeping me fulfilled.
What about you, RaeAnne? Are you go for the intense stuff, or are you like I'm just going to rewatch Great British Baking Show because it's so lovely?
Not great. I watched the UK Antiques Roadshow. That's how I feel very old, but I love Antique Roadshow, and I like the UK version, and so I watched that one. It's because I like to see things that are 400, 500 years old.
All right. Kim wanted to know whether or not you all create character sketches or just use the detailed outline. So Jill, I think you mentioned something about visual references.
Yes, well, actually for both, well, I don't know, I shouldn't speak for Anne. We try to start with characters first. To me, that's the most important part. And I often have tried to skip doing a character sketch and tried to go straight into outlining, and that never works unless I know the character, where they came from, where they're at, where they want to be. I can't possibly write their story. And so skipping that step never works for me. And then I also do visual. I'll go find cute guys that I think looks like my hero and pretty, you know, I like to have the visuals as well, but I also have a detailed character sketch on them.
Right. And I think when we plot, you know, we send out in advance the idea for the story that we're doing. And I think we all start with characters first. And if you don't know who those characters are, you know, and know where they start and where they need to end up, it's so much harder to plot because you don't know how to get them there because you don't exactly know where they need to end up. And so we really absolutely have to start with the characters. And I do pretty detailed sketches when I'm plotting, when I'm, you know, coming up with my idea for plot group and sending out, you know, saying, here's the hero and heroine and where I need to take them. And she's got the most to lose. And and I know, if we can talk about the summer deal a little bit, you know, when we plotted that one, I thought it was really interesting the way we plotted that one in particular, that we plotted, like, we took 3 different sort of storylines, right? And we plotted each of the characters with their own story, right? Do you remember?
Yes, that's exactly what we did. Well, we did the main heroine, then we did a storyline for the 2 heroines together, and then we did the love stories, and then we threaded it all together, which was every bit as complicated as you might think. But it was really the only way to tackle a story like that.
Right. So when you do a story that has, you know, subplots and like interactions between sisters or between friends or grandmothers and daughters or however, you actually have to plot that storyline as well so that you can thread those things through the story. Otherwise, you lose some of the subplots somewhere as you're writing. You lose where that needs to come in, and then you realize, oh, it's been like 4 chapters since I've brought in this particular subplot.
But when we do it right in the plotting, then when we shuffle the storylines together, so to speak, we don't have that problem. So it's all in the planning ahead of time. For me, the plotting is the very, very hardest part. And I often am such a bummer at plot group because I'm anxiety ridden, and I'm, you know, it's so hard for me to put things in order. I don't know what that is, but it's very difficult for me. But once I do it and it's done, then it's a joy to write the story. Like, the hard part for me is done.
Right. I think that's universal, because it is hard to come up with a fresh idea that's taking something in a different way that you haven't done before. You've written 100 plus books, right? And I'm not nearly at your level. I've only done 65, but even at 65, it's hard to come up with something fresh and new. So that's the real beauty of the plot group, is that you've got other minds who are looking at your story. I can remember in particular one time when we plotted with Susan Mallory, and she came up with a certain plot twist for mine, and she said, "You've got to do it this way." And you and I were like, "No way, I can't.
Don't do it that way."
There's no way.
She was right.
She was absolutely right. And as I wrote that book, and it was one of the stronger books I've written, because I would never have taken it that way, but because she gave me that advice, you know.
And now we often make the joke, what would Susan Mallory do?
We do. We say, what would Susan say here? She's not always plotting with us. We have plotted with her a few times, but she's not. We get together without her as well. But she sort of is our guide, even though she's not there. She's taught us so much.
I like what would Susan Mallory do. I also like, you know, the sort of casual. I've only written like 65 books. You know,
I was laughing at that.
65. Given that you both have an abundance of characters that you've created, this is probably not going to be an easy question, but Staci would like to know which of your characters you would like to hang out with. Who would go walk on Manhattan Beach with you?
Oh my goodness. Well, people often ask me what my favorite book is, and quite honestly, it's always the book that's finished, that I have just finished, because there's still that little magic lingering that came in at the last moment, and it's still like, it's the honeymoon glow, I call it, because I don't have to write their story anymore. It's done. They're perfect. And so for me, it's the summer deal. I would love to go, you know, hang out on the beach with the guys in the summer deal. That wouldn't be bad. And if the seals want to run by while we're hanging out on the beach, like they did for us in Manhattan Beach, that's okay.
I don't know if I could answer a favorite character either. And it's the one you just finished. I had a great grandmother in the book I just finished, and I loved her, and she would have been a lot of fun. But that's one that's not coming out till Christmas time. So
what's it called?
Gets to read it till then. The name of it is Christmas at Holiday House. It was the one we plotted with Susan in last fall.
That's a great book.
It was really fun to write. It was.
And by the way, that was one that we had to fix your secondary. We plotted it, then you came home, you started to write it, you weren't comfortable with it, and we fixed it.
Right. Yeah, I didn't like one of the directions we had taken it at plot group. And so I said, I've got to do something different here. This isn't working for me, but we were able to make it work for the secondary character. And I really liked that part of it. Turned out I like the secondary. Sometimes I like the secondary characters a little bit more. Not that I don't love the main characters in this one, but
that definitely happened to me in the summer deal. The secondary love story ended up being equal to the first one, and I loved them every bit as much.
I remember when we plotted that, I don't think you were going to have a love scene.
No, there wasn't going to.
Or a love interest for the second one. Her story was just going to be, you know, maybe she meets somebody and there's a potential there, but I think that's wonderful the way things change.
I know, it worked out.
That's splendid. So, assuming that the post-pandemic world, the post-quarantine world is one in which we are able to gather in person again, where do you want to go and what do you want to do? Even if it's not the thing you do immediately, even if that's something more mundane, what is the thing that you are most passionately longing to do?
Well,
Besides
RaeAnne
not live in a
travels
house
more
with
than me.
9 other people.
Yeah, anywhere, anywhere, please. But RaeAnne always has ideas of where she wants to go. Where are you going to go first?
Right now, I haven't even thought of anything, because this is all consuming. And so,
It is.
and our youngest is still in high school. So we've got one more year, to sort of stick close to home. And then I don't know if things resolve, I'm in a situation where I can't travel very often with our son now with disabilities. We've had caregivers at various times that could stay with him, and we don't really have that right now. And so I'm not really letting myself think about too many other places, but I'd love to have plot group again in California.
Yes.
We'll have to make sure we can get away from the
know.
cold in February. Hopefully
Yeah, that's when we go. That's
have
what I'd like to.
vaccines by then that
Yes.
will allow us to travel. And I love Disney stuff, so I'd like to do a Disney trip, someday. Again.
So is plot group sort of like this magic combination of a writing workshop and a slumber party, or?
No, they all go to bed at like 7 o'clock at night.
It is exhausting. It is exhausting.
I'm like, come on. I always tell my husband, he's like, well, aren't you busy? And I said, everybody's in bed.
We get up early, we work our ass off for like 12 hours, and then I go to bed.
Well, and I think some of it is we're introverts, and so people just kind of, afterward, we've talked to each other all day long. People just kind of need to have a little bit of quiet too. I think that's.
But we do a lot of chit chatting on breaks, and right when we're done, we all go to dinner. We walk on the beach, and you and I walk on the beach for a good hour every morning. And so it is really nice. Like I said before, I think you were gone. You were trying to get back on. We work alone all year long, so it's so nice to finally get with your people, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So I guess it's as much of a slumber party as the introverts allow themselves.
Yeah, but don't have the idea that we're up all night partying, because it's not like that.
No.
We're like 70-year-old golden girls going to bed.
Well, I have become completely disillusioned.
I would party all night, but everyone else is in bed. So.
I feel like you're the resident extrovert of the group.
I'm not, though. I mean, I need my me time too, but I don't know. It's, we've figured out a system that works, and if it works to go to bed early, then be fresh. We do have to bring our whole concentration during the plot time. And so part of it is you want to be the best for everybody else whose books you're helping, because they've helped you. And so, I mean, you do have to be sort of protective of your space a little bit.
All right. Well, do either of you have something of relevance that you want to make sure we share before we wrap this up? We're getting close to our hour, and I know we have people watching like from the other side of the Atlantic, so all kinds of time zones. So we want to be respectful of people's time.
Well, I'd like to ask Jill, what is next? And you might have covered that while I was gone, but what's coming up next for you after the summer deal?
I have a Christmas novella coming out in audio first, audio in November, and digital in December, and then print to come shortly after that, called Mistletoe in Paradise. So I'm doing something new. Usually I write Christmas stories that are set in a snowy landscape. This time it's about two contentious exes who end up stuck together on a boat in the Caribbean over Christmas. How about you? What are you doing next? I can't remember. I've lost track.
So I have my Christmas book coming out that I finished. That's the Christmas at Holiday House. It's the start of a new series. Since my summer book is the last book in my Haven Point series, so I'm kind of starting something new. And now I'm working on the one we plotted this year. That is the another one in my Cape Sanctuary series. It's the one with the two sisters, right? The one lady who helps senior citizens move out of their houses.
Oh, that's going to be a good one.
Yeah. We had lots of fun plotting that one.
Yep.
And that comes out in April. The Path to Sunshine Beach is the title. Sunshine
title.
Cove, I think.
Very good title.
Something like that.
I guess I should say my next big book is January, called The Forever Girl. And it's it takes place in Wildstone too, which is where the Summerdale is set, on the coast in the middle of the state of California, on the coast, surrounded by wineries and ranches and beach.
And the one you're working on, will that come out next year, next summer?
So The Forever Girl is January. The one I'm working on is next June.
Oh.
And it's tentatively titled Love for Beginners.
Oh, I like that title. That's cute.
Yeah, and I can't talk about it yet because right now it's not worthy.
So it's not one we plotted though.
No, unfortunately, I ran out of, we were working ahead. Somehow I got behind.
Oh.
Yeah, so I need plot group again, just by the way.
Okay, we'll do it. Maybe we'll do a Zoom if
Yes.
we have to. Do a Zoom plot group.
Once again, thank you both so much for taking the time and energy to join us. And